The first sign that something was deeply wrong came in the form of a voicemail at 3:47 a.m. I was already half awake, not because of any noise or dream, but because of that strange tension in the air, the kind your body notices before your brain does. My phone buzzed softly on the nightstand, and I blinked into the darkness, reading the caller ID. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Evelyn Clark didn't call in the middle of the night unless someone had died, or unless something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. Then the second buzz came. A text from Dad. Nadine, come to the house. Now. No punctuation. No context. Just demand. I swung my legs over the bed, pulled on jeans and a hoodie, and pressed play on the voicemail with a shaky thumb. Nadine, sweetheart, it's your mom. There's been an issue with the bank. Please, call us as soon as you get this. It's about Landon's loan. We need to talk. Now. Please, baby, just call us. The voice was breathless, cracked at the edges, and that's how I knew it was real, because Evelyn Clark didn't crack. She managed. She guilt. She orchestrated, but she never cracked. The drive to my parents' house took exactly 90 minutes, most of it through empty residential streets lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and glowing porch lights. Boulder was always quiet at night, but that morning, because, let's face it, for AM was morning, it felt like the city was holding its breath. When I pulled into the cul-de-sac, the Clark house looked exactly the way it always had. Not a single tile out of place, the porch light still humming faintly like a beacon of upper-middle-class respectability. But something was off. The front door was already open. Inside, my parents sat at the kitchen island like mannequins, still, stiff, pale. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. My mother's hair was down, something I'd only ever seen when she was sick or grieving. I didn't say hello. I didn't sit down. What did you do? I asked quietly. I already knew. God help me, I'd known for weeks that this moment was coming. My mother stood, wringing her hands. Honey, please, just listen before you jump to any conclusions. Did you use my savings? Silence. My father cleared his throat. It was collateral, he said, for Landon's business loan, just as backing. We never thought it would come to this. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. You what? My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. Brady, his partner, disappeared. The payments are overdue. The bank's calling in the loan. They said they'll seize the collateral if we can't pay. My savings. The account I'd opened when I was 16. The one I'd nurtured through college, graduate school, my first job, every bonus, every raise. 15 years of quiet, careful discipline. Explain to me, I said slowly, how you even had access. My dad looked away. We had some of your old paperwork, from when you were a minor. The bank manager, we've known him for years. He thought it was just an oversight. You forged my signature. No, Mom said too quickly, then quieter. No, not exactly. We just implied your participation. I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. It scraped out of me like broken glass. And Landon? I asked, where is he right now? My dad sighed. He's not answering. Of course not. My hand moved to my pocket. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and opened the banking app. Turned the screen toward them. Mom leaned forward, squinting, then blanched. No, that can't be right. There should be over 300,000 in there. There was, I said, letting the words freeze the room. Not anymore. My mother's mouth opened, then shut. My father's jaw clenched. What did you do? She whispered. I smiled without warmth. That's your question? After you stole from me. Dad stood. Nadine, please. The house is tied to this, too. If we default, we'll lose everything. I looked around the kitchen. The same granite counters I'd wiped clean every night as a teenager. The same floor I'd once scrubbed with a toothbrush because Landon had spilled juice and blamed me. "You already lost everything," I said. "You just don't know it yet." And I walked toward the door without another word. 2 weeks before that 4 a.m. confession, I'd already started moving the money. Not all at once, never all at once. That would have triggered alerts, and my parents might not have noticed numbers, but they noticed drama. So I shifted it slowly, methodically across multiple accounts. Then I moved it all offshore. A shell company, Clark Horizon Holdings, registered legally in the Cayman Islands. I had help. Good help. Her name was Janelle Walsh, my best friend since college, and now one of the sharpest estate attorneys in Denver. She was the first person I called after I overheard my mother on speakerphone talking to Landon in a tone that didn't match her words. "She won't even know it's gone," Mom had said, casual as if she were discussing the weather. "We'll just file the paperwork, and if Landon's business takes off, she'll never need to know." I stood frozen outside the study door, heartbeat thudding so loud I could barely hear the rest. But that had been the moment. I drove straight to Janelle's office that night, walked past the janitor vacuuming the hallway, and handed her a flash drive. "Listen to this," I said. She did, twice, then leaned back slowly in her chair. "They're planning financial theft, and you're the target." I nodded. "Then we need to beat them to it," she said, reaching for her laptop. It took us 3 hours. By morning, Clark Horizon Holdings was real. Every cent of my earnings, my emergency fund, even the small inheritance from Grandma Betty, was legally transferred to the company. On paper, the assets were no longer mine. They were owned by an entity I controlled, but no court could seize it without a fight. That was the moment I stopped being the dutiful daughter. I became the firewall. And I did it quietly, methodically, while Mom invited me to Sunday brunch, while Dad asked if I'd considered putting some money into a family trust, while Landon left drunken voicemails about needing one last push to hit market scale. They were laying a trap. They just didn't know the rabbit had teeth. Janelle made sure the paperwork was airtight. Every transfer had a legal rationale. Every account was documented. Nothing hidden, but nothing exposed. "They'll try to say you hid the money," she said. "Let them. What you did was smart. It was self-defense." Still, it stung. The first time Landon called me selfish was when we were 16, and I refused to do his college applications for him. He threw a shoe at my door. Mom grounded me for not being helpful. I should have known then. But when you grow up inside manipulation, it doesn't look like a crime. It looks like family. That's why when Dad begged me to consider releasing some funds to save the house, I didn't even blink. "There are no funds," I said flatly. "Not ones you can touch." He paled. "Nadine, this is your family." "No," I replied. "This is theft. I'm just the first person in this family to call it by its name." Later that night, Janelle handed me a manila folder thick with printouts. "This is everything," she said. "Your new structure, your protections, your proof." I flipped it open. A line of numbers, clean, crisp, defensible. "Clark Horizon Holdings now owns the entirety of your previous assets," she said. "And you're the sole director. If anyone tries to claim your accounts for a loan, they'll find an empty shell." I nodded. Good. Because I think they're about to try exactly that. And 2 days later they did. That 3:47 a.m. voicemail wasn't desperation. It was too late for that. It was the sound of people who thought they could control me, realizing, far too late, that they never actually could. By the time the bank sent their official letter demanding repayment, Janelle and I were already 10 steps ahead. We knew they'd come knocking. We just didn't know how many locked doors they'd already forced open in my name. It started with a document from 5 years ago, a loan application from Sterling Private Capital, co-signed by Nadine Clark. Except, I'd never heard of that company. I certainly hadn't signed anything. Janelle ran it through a forensic signature tool. "Not even close," she said, placing the scanned signature beside mine. Sloppy. They didn't even try to match it. That's when we dug deeper. We pulled my credit history, tax returns, archived bank statements, anything with my name on it from the last 15 years. And what we found made my stomach turn. 17 forged documents, all tied to personal loans, business registrations, or financial transfers, all bearing variations of my signature, some from when I was 20, others as recent as last year, different banks, different purposes. One common thread: my parents' names were always nearby. And Landon, his fingerprints were all over everything. He's been the recipient or co-signer on almost all of them, Janelle said, flipping through the pile. They've used you like a financial fallback plan. Repeatedly. Consistently. I felt sick. I remembered being 22 and confused when my student loan statement looked higher than it should have. Mom said it was interest. I believed her. I remembered losing a promotion because of a sudden drop in my credit score. Dad blamed credit system errors. I let it go. How many lies had I swallowed just to keep the family peace? I stood up and paced the room, hands trembling. This isn't just fraud, I said. It's systemic, coordinated. Janelle nodded. It's also personal. That night, I got a call from Aunt Lorraine, my mother's sister, and the only relative who'd never treated me like an ATM. Her voice was tight, fast, like she'd been waiting for an excuse to speak. Nadine, they screwed you, she said. They've been screwing you for years. I sat down slowly. How do you know? Because your grandparents left part of the house to you, she snapped. A third, in fact. It was in the will, a direct inheritance. But they never told you, did they? No, they didn't. She cursed. Of course they didn't. They've been making decisions about that property like they own it outright. But legally, you've had a stake since you were 18. My hands clenched the edge of the table. And the trust fund, she added, the one you thought disappeared during Landon's freshman year? That was yours too. They liquidated it when you were still a minor. Said it was reallocated. It wasn't. I stared at the wall, the weight of it all pressing into my chest. How much? I whispered. 90 grand. At least. My world tilted sideways. I thanked her, barely remembering what I said. Then forwarded everything. Documents, timelines, voice memos to Janelle. Her response was immediate. This is not just fraud, she said. This is financial abuse. We built a timeline. We highlighted patterns. We named names. And then we drafted the first lawsuit. I wasn't just protecting what was mine anymore. I was reclaiming what they'd stolen. 3 days after that 3 a.m. call, I came back to the house. This time I didn't come alone. Janelle walked beside me, clipboard in one hand, a slim black briefcase in the other. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor, like a metronome for reckoning. My parents sat at the same kitchen island where they'd begged for my savings. My mother looked smaller somehow. My father's shoulders slumped forward. Landon, of course, was late. Perfect. Let's begin, Janelle said, placing the stack of documents on the island. We're here so Nadine can present the legal and financial evidence of the fraud committed in her name. You'll remain seated and silent until she finishes. Dad scoffed. This is ridiculous. Page 3, I said calmly, sliding a sheet forward. That's a loan application to Sterling Private. Signature line, not mine. Mom leaned forward, eyes narrowing. It's just a name. Page 6. I didn't let her finish. A transfer of my college fund into Landon's LLC. You claimed it was a reallocation. You never asked for my consent. Nadine, sweetheart. Page 9. I continued, voice steady. Bank statements from Midtown Credit Union. You used my savings account balance as collateral. Dated 2 months ago. My mother blinked. That can't be right. You had over $300,000. I did, I said. 3 months ago. The kitchen went still. Dad stood abruptly and walked to the window like the hydrangeas outside had become fascinating. Mom's hands fluttered nervously. "We had to do something," she whispered. "Landon and Brady had an opportunity. Where is Brady?" I interrupted. Silence. "He's disappeared," Dad finally admitted. "No one's heard from him. We think maybe Singapore." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So, your brilliant business partner vanished, and instead of calling the police, you decided the solution was to forge my documents and steal from your own daughter." "We didn't forge," Mom insisted, voice rising. "We were helping the family." "No," I said. "You were helping Landon, and you dragged me into it without permission." The door slammed. Landon stumbled in, reeking of cheap whiskey and desperation. "Did you tell her?" he slurred, pointing at Dad. "About the foreclosure notice?" My head snapped up. "What notice?" Mom shot him a glare, but he kept talking. 10 days, he said, leaning against the doorframe. "We got 10 days before they take the house." I stared at him. "You let it get to foreclosure?" "You can fix this," he shouted suddenly. "You have the money, Nadine. You always do. Little Miss Perfect, always saving, always prepared. Enough!" Dad's voice cracked like a whip. "Landon, sit down before you fall down." I gathered the documents into a neat pile. "So the house is going. The loan is defaulting. And now you expect me to come in and save you again." Mom reached for my hand. "Nadine, sweetie, we can fix this. Just move some funds back." "Those funds don't exist anymore," I said coldly. "They belong to Clark Horizon Holdings, and that entity is inaccessible." "But we're your family," Landon groaned. "You can't just let this happen." "I'm not letting anything happen," I said, walking to the door. "I'm letting you experience consequences. For once in your life." Dad called after me. "The media will be all over this. The foreclosure, the scandal, it'll ruin our name." I turned back. "You did that yourselves. When you decided my consent didn't matter. When you chose fraud over integrity." Mom's voice was a whisper. "What are you going to do?" I looked at them for the last time. "I'm going to let you live in the mess you created without your safety net." Then I opened the door, and behind me Landon muttered, "But you promised. You said Nadine would fix everything. Not this time." It didn't take long. By the next morning, rumors were already circulating at the country club. A foreclosure notice on the Clark residence. Quiet whispers about Evelyn's absence at the charity board. Douglas's sudden leave from Halcyon Wealth Group. People connected dots fast when money was involved. And I didn't say a word. Not until Aunt Lorraine called again. "You need to see this," she said, voice clipped. "Your father's firm is being audited. Word is this isn't the first time they've smoothed over questionable transactions." I stood in my kitchen, clutching a mug of coffee I hadn't tasted in hours. "Are they investigating him?" "Not just him," she said. "The whole executive tier." Someone handed over a file. Anonymously. I didn't have to ask who. Janelle had already submitted copies of the forged documents and falsified banking information, along with a formal complaint outlining every instance of financial abuse I could prove. "This isn't about family shame," she'd said firmly. "This is about accountability." The same day the complaint became public record, I received a text from Landon. "You destroyed everything. Hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Then came the one from my mother. "Your father's firm is asking him to resign. The media is circling. If you care about us at all, you'll stop this now." That word again, us. As if I was never part of it. I was reviewing new court documents with Janelle when Lorraine called a third time. "He did it again," she said. "Who?" "Landon," she snapped. "He took out another private loan. Not from a bank. From people who don't leave paper trails." My blood turned to ice. "How do you know?" "One of them showed up at my house looking for him." Janelle was already pulling up real-time alerts. If these people are who I think they are, we need to call law enforcement. My phone buzzed. Family meeting, 7 p.m. Tonight, non-negotiable, a group text. From Mom. I stared at it for a moment, then typed a single reply. I'm bringing my attorney. At exactly 7 o'clock, I walked into the house I no longer called home. Janelle beside me, calm and unreadable. The living room was full. Mom's mascara was smudged. Dad looked pale, exhausted. Landon was pacing, his knee bouncing like a jackhammer. Lorraine and my cousin Morgan sat on the far end of the couch, arms crossed, watching everything. This is a family meeting, Mom said coldly. Your lawyer can wait outside. She stays, I said, taking a seat. Now, let's talk about why we're really here. We need to fix this, Dad said, barely above a whisper. The foreclosure, the investors, it's spiraling. Because you committed crimes, Lorraine said flatly. Mom stood, voice rising. We did what we had to do, to protect the family. To protect Landon, I corrected. Same thing, she snapped. Landon jumped up. This is all your fault. If you just helped like you were supposed to. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say that again, I said calmly. Tell me exactly what I was supposed to do. He blinked. Mom and Dad said you'd understand. That you'd do what's right. That's why they used your accounts. Travis, Mom hissed. Stop talking. They said you'd never let the family fall apart, he continued. That's why they forged your signature. They knew you'd fix it. Janelle didn't even flinch. She just tapped the record button again. Lorraine raised her own phone. I think we're all recording now. Then Morgan looked down at his screen. Oh, he said with a little smile. I think I just accidentally streamed this entire conversation to the club group chat. The room froze. The what? Dad whispered. Morgan held up his phone. And look at that. A couple local reporters are in that chat. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. But it was already done. And suddenly, no one had anything left to say. By the time I walked out of that house, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Group messages exploding. Country club scandals. Anonymous posts from concerned neighbors. The audio file from our little family meeting had already been downloaded dozens of times. It didn't matter. I wasn't going back. Not to the house. Not to the role. Not to the version of myself that kept believing I owed them more than the truth. The next morning, my blog post went live. The cost of being the responsible one. I didn't hold back. I wrote everything. The forged signatures, the fake loan paperwork, the savings account used as collateral without my consent. I uploaded scanned documents, audio clips, legal proof. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The internet filled in the blanks. Within hours, I was flooded with messages. People, hundreds of them, sharing stories of being financially abused by their own families. Used, lied to, betrayed. Most of them had never told anyone before. You hit a nerve, Janelle said quietly, scrolling through the avalanche of comments. You started something. Lorraine called again. Your father's firm just issued a public statement, she said. They're calling it early retirement due to personal reasons. Translation: fired with prejudice. She didn't sound sad. And your mother's been dropped by every board she sits on. No one wants to be tied to this mess. I didn't smile. I didn't cry either. It just felt done. That afternoon, I sat across from Stella and a federal investigator. I handed over every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Fraud, identity theft, tax violations, potential RICO implications from the shell games Landon and Brady had been playing for years. It was bigger than even I'd imagined. They may not go to prison, Stella said later, but they won't walk away clean. Good, said. I'm not doing this for punishment. Then why are you doing it? She asked. I looked out the window where soft snow had just begun to fall over Boulder. For peace. That night I packed a suitcase. 3 weeks. Italy. Just me. A reset. Quincy showed up at dawn with croissants and coffee. Morgan had texted a link to a news article. Local financial advisor investigated in multi-million-dollar fraud. Dad's picture was right under the headline. They always thought reputation was armor, I told Janelle at the airport. Turns out it's paper. One match, and she nodded. And you lit it with the truth. Just before boarding, I got one last text. You can't just abandon your family forever. Mom, I held it up for Janelle to see. Watch me, I said. We both laughed. Not bitterly. Not cruelly. Just free. On the plane, I ordered champagne. I watched the mountains fall away through the window. I thought of my childhood home, now empty. Of Landon, hiding somewhere, still convinced someone would save him. Of my parents, sitting in a motel room, trying to rewrite the story like they always did. But this time, the ending belonged to me. I thought of the voicemail Dad left me the night before. Pearl, please. We're still your parents. You can't just walk away. But they were wrong. I wasn't just walking away. I was walking toward something better. Something mine. And I didn't look back. Italy was quiet. Not the tourist traps. Not the bustling piazzas or jam-packed art galleries. But the hills outside Florence were olive trees bent with age, and the wind didn't carry expectation. That's where I found my breath again. 3 weeks of silence. Art. Wine. Sunlight. No voicemails. No guilt. No noise. Just me. And then something unexpected. My blog post, the one I thought would sink into the noise of the internet, had gone viral. Not just locally. Nationally. It had a name now, Family Fraud Syndrome, coined by a financial abuse advocate in Boston who said my story cracked open a silence no one dared name. I was asked to speak on a panel, then at a university, then by a state representative pushing for new legislation, protections against identity theft within families. I said yes, because it no longer felt like vengeance. It felt like building a firewall for every other Nadine who didn't have a Janelle or an Aunt Lorraine. I donated the restitution money from the bank, every last cent, to a financial literacy fund for women in vulnerable family structures. Not because I didn't need it, but because someone else needed it more. That felt right. Months passed. Lorraine sent me a photo once, Mom and Dad standing outside a low-budget motel in Nevada. Faces hollowed by shame they still couldn't name. Below it, she texted, "She keeps saying if you'd just come back, this would all go away." I replied, "So would the truth." And that was that. Janelle and I started a side project, Clark Horizon Foundation, named for the very shell company that saved me. But now it funded real women, real exits, real autonomy. People asked me if I forgave them. I said forgiveness was never the point. Understanding was. And understanding this, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a drowning family is let go of the rope. I kept one thing. A photo. Me, age 17, standing with my diploma, bright-eyed, naive. It was taken 2 weeks before they stole my college fund. I didn't keep it to remember the pain. I kept it because that girl became me in spite of everything. And because one day when I'm older and someone else asks, "How did you survive that?" I'll show them her photo and say, "She didn't survive. She rebuilt." And that made all the difference.